Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dan Nessel Show. I'm your host, Dan Nessel. Sometimes I have a conversation with a guest, and the only word that comes to mind after I'm done is legend. And that, my friends, describes my guest today, PR communications legend in his own right, turned executive coach to marketing communications agency leaders. He's a prolific content creator and a writer. He's a long-term Public Relations Society of America board member and contributor. He's a consummate networker who embodies service. I'm just so happy to call him my friend. You're going to love our conversation about PR and communications agencies, about leadership, about creativity, and much, much more. So without further ado, let's get right into it with Ken Jacobs. Ken, it is so good to see you. How you doing?
It is great to be here. I have been looking forward to this all day as we anticipate maybe some snow, maybe some rain, but it's a good day. I'm
Yeah, you're here in
excited.
New Jersey, same as I am. You're, of course, down the shore, right?
Well, yes, I'm in Asbury Park, so that's all kinds of cool things. And what's among the many attributes is that if you watch the local weather forecast and you see the warnings and the this and the that, and there's always a strip of green, often not in the warning zone,
Yeah.
that's us. That's
Oh,
like us and in 2 or 5 or 10 miles. So we've had many times, many experiences where people are, oh my God, it took me 3 hours to get to work. We hit rain.
get that
So
that nice warm
exactly.
Atlantic breeze coming in.
Among the many wonderful things of living in Asbury Park, which we do love.
You are fortunate to be there, but I'll tell you who
Very
is more
fortunate.
fortunate I am. I'm more fortunate to be able to speak with you today.
Well, I don't
I mean,
know
look,
about
Ken,
that.
we've crossed paths probably many times over the last, I don't know how many years, but didn't know it. We run in similar circles,
Yeah,
albeit in different late locations on those circles. Ken runs his own consulting and executive coaching firm and has been working with leaders in the PR industry primarily for the past, I don't know how many years, and you'll get into it, but for
yeah.
many years. And Ken's specialty really is leadership in that field, like leadership in PR and communications, which means so many different things because, you don't necessarily think about, let me rephrase that. It's been a fairly recent phenomenon, I think, that our PR and communications leaders have really become leaders in the most, biggest sense of the word.
Well, I think we've been fortunate. We've had many. I will tell you, my first job. So I was in the PR business, I should explain.
Mhm.
For the first 25, 27 years of my career, I was very blessed, fortunate, lucky to work with two iconic PR leaders, glass ceiling breakers, Jean Way Schoonover and Barbara Way Hunter. Although I didn't join them in 1969, I was still a young but that's when they took over the firm. And there weren't that many women owning PR firms in New York in 1969. And they were just remarkable leaders and very supportive of me and gave me amazing opportunities. And they both really believed in me, you know, as a PR pro and manager very early on in my career. They were very different. They both inspire me to this day. Jean is no longer with us. Barbara is. She created this amazing chapter two after DAY became Ogilvy and Mather PR. She created Hunter PR, which is amazingly successful. So they both have tremendous leadership legacies.
And, it crosses across the agency side. So there's the agency side of PR, and most of my listeners probably understand this, but just for those who aren't, there's the agency side of PR, and then there's, client side. So when we say client side PR, we're talking about people, well, basically like me, who work inside of companies and who run, communications and so on. Sometimes it's mixed with marketing. We wear multiple hats like everybody else, like everybody does these days. But we work with agencies to flesh out our teams. In the best circumstances, we partner with the agency to really build a killer organization that leverages the expertise that's in and out of house. So it's a beautiful harmony. When that happens, man, it is magical, especially for the person who gets the credit, who's in house, like me. But really, it's where I was going, I think, was the agencies themselves are massive organizations. We think of them as these account teams that run or that suggest and advise and execute on communications and PR strategies for their clients. But we often don't think of them as companies in and of themselves that have their own structure, their own, the same issues that any company has. So it's a little bit of a meta discussion in some ways to think of a PR firm as anything other than a PR firm. But
It's funny. So I've been mostly an agency facing consultant and coach. And for many years, I wanted to go into corporate coaching. And I remember talking to some, oh, I'll never, I'll never get in. They'll never accept me, this and that. And she said, well, agencies are corporations, right? You're using the classic agency client sort of paradigm, but agencies are corporations. But, regardless of size, a soloist, partnership of two, boutique, small, medium, or large, organizations are organizations, and they all have the opportunity for leaders and for leadership. Even though I work primarily with agencies, PR, marketing, advertising, digital, you name it, real coaching, true coaching, coaching with a certified coach, if I may, the process is the same. I could coach using the same process. Engineers, mathematicians, astrophysicists. I mean, I don't know too many in those fields, but
yeah,
but the process, I don't really do coaching around PR. It's just that my clients, most of them come from that world. And for two reasons. Agency people are great. I know because I was one, but agency people really, because I think there's something about when you're in the agency side, somehow you're born to serve. You're born to serve your client. You want to get, so I think they're great people. And that's where I'm known and that's where my network has grown. So it only made sense. And when I've thought about expanding, to other audiences, sure, I could, but I think there's something like 8,000 agencies out there, just PR, not even including marketing, integrated communication, whatever. So, truth be known, I'm not working with all 8,000 yet. So,
oh,
so I've got a lot of people I still can serve through leadership coaching. So it's the right spot. And if I may, many of my clients have said, I know you don't coach me around PR or communications or content or digital or all that stuff, but knowing you've been there, knowing you were in my shoes pretty much, I just feel a comfort level with you. And I feel I can use a shorthand that I've had other business coaches. It's not quite the same. And I'm not knocking those business
of
coaches. This
course.
is what my clients have told me. So I relish it and I enjoy it. And, agency people are great.
I agree with you, having been an agency person at some point in my life as well. So, I'm with you on the overall quality of us in, in general.
And
Yeah.
corporate PR and corporate marketing people are great. And I know that. And corporate communications people are great because that's who I served
Mhm.
when I was in the agency business and I was their consultant, so to speak. So I've been very fortunate with the lineup of clients I've had in both careers. And I've learned from them tremendously.
It's great to see that agencies are really doing what they can to develop their leadership and to develop their management and leadership, and we'll get into probably the differences between those things
Yeah.
shortly. But,
Yeah.
it is refreshing, and from the client side, even to understand that there are people out there who get me or get us,
Mhm.
right? I think is a critical point when you're trying to establish a relationship that, like a coaching relationship, where it's not that far off from psychoanalysis. Sometimes for some people it's not that far off from getting, you expose yourself
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
have to be very real in so many ways. I'm not saying it is psychoanalysis, but, in the way that you open yourself and bare your soul, sometimes it really helps to have somebody on the other side who really understands what's being unsaid and the context. I've always been a contextual person. Like, I love
Mhm.
to have the context around things. My question was, when you do coach people in the field that you spent your whole life in, and, coaching, by the way, I've been told, and you've actually confirmed this for me before, but coaching is when you're not giving advice, you're leading people to their own conclusions, which is a really hard thing to do sometimes. So I would imagine, I'm going to put this out there to you, Ken, that Within the industry that you've known and loved and worked in and done so many roles, when you're now sitting on the other side of the table as a coach, how hard is it to refrain from advising?
Well, good point. So it was harder. So here's just a quick phase of my career. So I was in the business 25 plus years, got into PR agency management early, leadership early. That had pluses and it definitely had some minuses. And then in 2006, borderline seven, I created this new business facing the PR agency world or the agency world, consulting, training, and coaching. That was going along fine, and I realized that I liked the consulting, I was getting repeat business, and then, of course, 2008 and 9 happened, that was fun, and then the training was special, I loved when the light bulbs were going off, but the coaching felt more like a calling. So it was around 2013 that I wanted to get even more serious about it and went for my training at IPEC, the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. Went for my certification. And one of the earliest things we learned in our training is how different coaching and consulting are, and just trust that process of coaching. Trust it, trust it. And one of the keys to the process is asking. That sounded very New York. Asking, thank
I
you,
got you.
asking empowering questions. And so trusting that our clients have what they need for success and fulfillment. Our job is not to tell them what to do, not to share advice or counsel, even though it comes from a good place, but help them remove what's getting in the way of that success. And we do that through questioning. So I created my own mantra that don't tell, ask. If I'm going to veer into consulting, whether it's about a PR, though we don't talk a lot about PR plans, but it might be in how they're leading people
Yeah.
or how they're dealing with clients or how they're dealing with team issues. It's really much more about that. And I really fight the urge, and I have to believe my client knows the answer, but it's something's in the way.
Yeah.
And so my job is to help them unpack that. That's the calling. And if you really, if you give advice or counsel, there's a little bit of your ego in there, right? Because you want to tell them what to do and you want them to say, "Oh, that's great, Ken. Thank you." But if you're really serving your clients, you trust the coaching process, you trust the questions.
It makes sense, as a manager of people. And, I've put this out there on LinkedIn and other places, and certainly my listeners know I have also started a coaching business as
Good for
well. It's kind
you.
of sort of coach consulting, working on it. And Ken, by the way, has been very helpful to me in this respect. But, you know, one of the things that sort of put me in that direction is that sometimes when I work with people, you're right, the ego gets in the way. You say, yeah, hey, so and so, you might, if you try it this way, that's the way I did it, it'll work for you. Trust me. And then yeah, maybe it works. And you get a lot of gratitude and it's like, my pleasure, no problem. I can do that again for you. Here's the PowerPoint, whatever, follow the process. But what have I done for them? Like, what have I really done
Exactly.
for that person? I mean,
Exactly.
I'm sure that they pick something up. Maybe they'll copy and imitate things that they like, and maybe they will take it and manufacture some of their own things, and that's great. But wouldn't it have been better if I had the luxury of mindfulness, probably, if I understood what was going through that person's life and mind, and maybe a little bit of the luxury of time too, because there is that. But if I had that, wouldn't it have been better to kind of lead them to the water rather than tell them how to drink it? I
Well, I'm going to
yeah,
take that even a step further.
yeah.
Let them lead themselves.
There you
When
go.
you take your ego out of it and they have the wisdom, it's much more impactful. So here's, I think the example. If I say, Daniel, you really should do this, you might say, great, Ken. Oh, I'm really excited, whatever. But do you really have quote unquote skin in the game? Do you really have engagement? From a neuroscience point of view, you don't. We've only lit up part of your brain. What we want to do is light up the part of the brain where passion and emotion and engagement and commitment live. And it's
Yeah.
through asking question that happens. And they've done this. They've done MRIs and they talk to the person in the metal tube and they'll say, Daniel, I think you should do this. And there's a little light activity. Oh, yes, I should. And it lights up. Then they say, well, what do you what do you think the first step is towards that? What or what's the outcome or what's the vision? And it's like the lights just go off and off and off. And that's where you have engagement and passion and the beginning of commitment. And it's a neuroscience thing for
Yeah.
lack of process. When we ask questions, the person, if we say, I think you should do this, Daniel, you might be thinking of a million things. But if I say, Daniel, what's the most important thing you can do to launch your coaching business? Your brain will focus on that question.
Mm.
Your brain will release serotonin and it will just light up and get excited, and creativity starts to happen. Now, I might need to ask something to help you commit to that. I might say, so what's your plan? How will you hold yourself accountable? How can I support you? So that will extend that. But the impact you've had on that client's life and ability and ultimate fulfillment is so much more powerful.
Yeah.
I wanted to address one thing. You mentioned coaching and psychoanalysts and therapy.
Yeah.
I think where they're similar and where they're different. They're similar, I think, in that a lot of people find coaching therapeutic,
Yeah.
whatever that means for them.
Mhm.
Where I believe we're dear, and I'm certainly not certified in psychoanalyst or counseling or therapy. I believe that in psychoanalysis or therapy, we spend a lot of good time in the past understanding what happened, whom we need to forgive, whom we want to forgive, all that important stuff.
Mm.
In coaching, the past will come up and I'll wait for the person to clear some energy. And then I'll say, that's an interesting observation. What do you want to do about that now? With the emphasis on you, because not me, it's you. Do active verb now, right in this moment. That doesn't mean coaching and therapy can't work together. They can work very
Right.
well together. A number of my clients have also been in therapy of some form or seeing a psychoanalyst or a psychologist. And I'll always say, let me know if you are hearing things in our calls that feel different than in your sessions. You got to let me know because we're,
Yeah.
we're all, we're all on your team. Not
Mhm.
once has any client ever said, wow, this is really different than what my therapist says. Never,
So,
never happens so far.
and I like the way that you've painted that out, almost like as on a continuum. You could see where psychoanalysis happens and
Yeah.
where coaching happens. And I was wondering about how that, because you mentioned creativity a little bit. And that's a pet project of
Yeah.
mine, I'd say, or it's not really. It's a full blown passion. And I've been thinking a lot about creativity. So the fundamental thing to me about being creative or imaginative, or there's a word, and it's hard to put a word on it, um, is there's about not doing it actually. It's just there's something blocking your natural inclination to be a creative soul. I think that we all have the imperative to create. It's built into us as humans. And how that manifests will differ and vary. It doesn't have to be a book or a podcast or a
Hmm.
sculpture, or a work of art. It can be an idea. It can be a great conversation you're having with people. It can be a many different things, but you're always, whether you know it or not, you're always creating. Thing
Yeah.
is though, that when you put it to yourself or when somebody puts it to you, you got to be creative with something, or you got to take creativity into your job, or you got to take creativity into something else. Then it gets a little complicated. How do you define the creativity? Was this, was that, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot to it. But a lot of times it comes down to there's something blocking you from doing whatever that is, from making something where nothing was before.
It's so interesting you mentioned that because the term of an energy block is literally in our the tenets of our leadership approach that I was trained in. We talk about energy blocks and we talk about removing blocks
Hmm?
or helping empower. I don't even think of myself as helping people. I think of it as empowering them. And part of that is to empower them to remove those blocks. And that's part of the coaching process. So that's thought one. The other thing we talk about a lot in our coaching, which is energy coaching, is as you go on this journey, you raise your consciousness. Your energy becomes more anabolic, which we probably don't have time to go into anabolic and catabolic energy today. That's for part two.
Okay.
But as
Take
we,
note.
okay, take note, anabolic energy.
Yep.
But as we go higher and higher and tap into our more anabolic energy levels, it raises our consciousness.
Mhm.
and it removes barriers and it opens options. So if someone is in frequently what we would call a catabolic state, a stress state, where they're experiencing these energy blocks, good luck being creative.
Yeah.
Good luck. Not going to happen. But if you do the coaching work, you just see opportunities, you see options, and it allows you to be creative. So if I have a choice, or if someone comes to me, and even if they said, can you consult with us on improving client service or improving creativity or improving leadership? Can you consult with us on the business? If I suspect that there's something going on for the leader, I will encourage them to do the leadership coaching first. Get rid of those energy blocks, raise your consciousness. Because if you get to that more powerful place as a leader where people really want to follow you, and cliche alert, get in the boat, rowing in the
Yeah.
same direction, as they say, when you're at that point of leadership, anything you want to create, a new initiative on client service, an initiative on business development, getting more clients, an initiative on getting clients to do more, do more work with us. We do more
Mhm.
work for them. We make more money. Profitability, whatever it may be, if the leader or the leaders are in that better, more evolved space, everything else becomes easier.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to my own experience when you as you talk about this because, we've all been in these situations where you're at a certain point in your career, and actually at all points in your career as a communicator and a marketer, there's always a call to be doing creative work. I mean, it's always
Hmm. Sure.
part it's baked into the pie. It's just a question of what your role is in that creative process at the time. And sometimes, it's simply, you're part of a project team and you're literally coming up with a creative execution about something. Like you got the whiteboard going on and
Hmm.
people are throwing ideas around and it's a lot of fun and it's wonderful. And that's a kind of, baseline creativity. You're that's what I think a lot of people think about when they think about it. But when you have a leader who is really, let me just say, creatively challenged, I
Yeah.
think is a charitable way of saying this, but when they put so many guardrails down, that whiteboard session that is, like I said, the baseline of creativity is tamped down by a fog,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
or if you're going to use as a metaphor, you may have this great whiteboard session, but 9 out of 10 of those pens are out of ink, right? I mean, you're sitting there shaking those things out and dipping them in
Yeah.
water, but you're still not getting anything out on the board. So it's so important for it to come from the leader, and that's where I think it's overlooked a lot. That the culture of the organization you're in, the culture of your team, the culture of your own self. If you're by yourself, is so critical to being able to do creative work and to use your imagination and to let yourself run free or to let your team run free. And being that that's part of like leadership, it just makes me circle around. I want to circle around something else you said earlier. We're talking about leadership and a little bit about management. I think there might be some confusion about, maybe not confusion, but a lot of different
Yeah.
interpretations of what those mean. Can you tell us a little bit about how you approach that? What is
Sure.
leadership? What is
Sure.
management?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, to me, they're very different. And I think when we use them interchangeably, I think it does a disservice to both. So for me, management, and usually in a PR or just say agency career, you often go through, training, practitioner, manager, leader. That should be the arc, I think. Um, Management is about things. We manage things, we manage budgets, production schedules, getting the train out of the station on time at the quality level, at the brand level that it's supposed to be, and on budget. All those kind of things, right? Those are things. Leadership is always about people, that human element, right? So, and leadership for me is can be at any level, really, right? Leadership, in my view, is about using your leadership energy or your leadership influence to drive the best outcomes for the organizations, for your teams, for your peers, for your clients, for your stakeholders, for your boss, if you have a boss, and yes, for yourself. You can use that energy, you can harness it, you can lead through influence very early on in one's career. When I talk about, leadership is not about the salary in the corner office and the fancy car or even the title. I've known EVPs who truly were not leaders. They
Mm,
truly weren't. Because leadership to me, again, by definition, is you make that conscious choice to lead people, to lead human beings. And your teams and those other people I mentioned choose to follow you. And it is a choice. I mean, they may come in every day, they may check off the to do list, your name may be on their paycheck even, but they choose to follow you because of your consistent leadership behaviors. So I want to give a little salute to Annie Heckenberger.
mm.
She's a big social media person out of Philadelphia. In fact, she ran the social media for the Democratic National Convention in Philly in 2016. But I share her story because when we were at Marina Mar Communications, and I think we're going back to when did Annie join us? The mid late 90s, but by the time she was a senior AE, she was a leader. She had influence. It was mostly through sharing knowledge. She really got us up to date on pop culture and how it can be used to drive PR programs. I mean, I absolutely remember her saying, "Yeah, there's Destiny's Child, but watch Beyonce." And truly, and then I'm going to date myself. What was Gwen Stefani in?
No doubt.
There was no doubt, but watch this Gwen Stefani. I remember that. She also talked about the merger of rock and roll and pro wrestling before that was,
Interesting.
so she was just this trend person. But more than that, she was so knowledgeable and so influential and was such a sharer that as a senior AE, she had a followership. She had followers. And so that was a great lesson. I didn't see it at the time. I didn't realize it at the time till I got more knowledgeable about what leadership is. And if I can give her another tip of the hat, back in 2006, 7, when I was starting all this and Twitter was for me just coming up and LinkedIn and Facebook and all that good stuff, she was my sort of reverse mentor,
Huh.
which I shouldn't even say. She was my social media mentor. The fact that I was older and more experienced, we shouldn't even say reverse. She was my mentor and really helped me understand social media. And she would spend so much time, all virtual, because I think was she in Philly by then? Who knows? And I'm just indebted to her
Yep.
because when I prospects call, "Where'd you hear of me?" "I don't know, somewhere on LinkedIn you wrote something good or your blog or Twitter." And I'm like, I wouldn't have been there without Annie. So Annie, I hope I haven't embarrassed you, but you know how I feel.
She's not embarrassed yet, but when I publish this episode and tag her, she will be.
She will love it.
She'll love it,
She
I'm
will
sure.
love it because she's a giver. She's a giver. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that was one thing I wanted to share about leadership,
Yeah.
that you can start to lead at any point in your agency or
Mhm.
any career. And even if you don't lead at the beginning, even as you get in training and become a practitioner, open your eyes, watch the people around you who are great leaders, who are inspirers, who are inspired, who people follow, and watch what they do. I think as you go through a PR or marketing or comms career, we're watching people who are very good practitioners, and we should learn from them. Watch the leaders too.
Can anybody be a leader? Let me make that a two-parter, okay? Can anybody be a leader? And should everybody be a leader?
I think we can all become better leaders and more powerful leaders, but I'll go back to something in the industry business that I observed, and I think it still happens. People are in PR management and they're leading great campaigns and they're great with clients and they get renewals and they get expansions of program, and maybe even they're great with their prospects with new biz or biz dev. And then we put them in positions of leadership. We haven't always trained them for leadership skills. We haven't asked them to prove themselves as leaders. So I think we in the industry, if I'm being, and to some degree, I was one of them. I benefited from that, where we promote them to leadership positions either because they've been great managers or great PR, social, digital content people. I think that's, excuse me, a very big mistake.
Right.
But to your question, I think many leaders, maybe even most leaders, were once very good managers, but not all managers are meant to make the jump to leadership. and that's okay. Let's have people doing what they're good at. If you're a really good manager, and maybe you should own something, a vertical practice area or something like that, where it's not a lot about leading people, that's fine. That's fine. But if you're meant to be a leader, or if you have the opportunity to be a leader, it takes training,
Mhm.
it takes mentoring, and it takes some coaching. It takes some coaching. So I've been very fortunate. I've coached some leaders in training, and it's a great experience. It's a great opportunity. And for the leaders, for leaders to leaders, we think of them as leading teams, but you get to a point where the group of people reporting to you is getting bigger and bigger, and ultimately you're leading leaders in training, or you're leading leaders in their own right,
Yeah.
who are, even though sports coaching is very different than leading, sports coaching, excuse me, is very different than the coaching we do. If you look to the sports world, if you look at people who are coaching, I know nothing about sports. I'm going to get his name wrong, but you'll correct me. Bill Belichick of
You
the
got it right. Yeah,
Patriots.
you got it right.
Whoa,
And by the way, you chose
yay!
the one that I know because I know probably about as
Right.
much about
Well, I
sports as you
used
do.
to use Pat Riley, but that dates me. And I used to talk about how Pat Riley would lead. It was Magic Johnson, right? And
Yeah.
he's a true star, a true leader. So coaching someone who's a leader and a star in their own right takes very special skills. And Bill Belichick, I would think, did it with Tom Brady. Second sports name, got it right. You heard it here first, folks. Four sports names. It's
That's
never happened
crazy talk.
before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where sports coaching and leading have some similarities in that, and if you've got leaders on your team or leaders in training, you do need to lead them differently.
Mhm.
And that's a great gift. That's a great leadership legacy. I always say in the PR cemetery or the agency cemetery, it doesn't say, "Oh, he doubled his client budget in 2 years." That goes on the resume, but that's not on your tombstone, or your legacy
Right.
are the people you inspired to be great leaders. And, I'm fortunate from the inspiration I got from Gene and Barbara, who I mentioned, Lenore Cooney, who was my leader at one point at Ogilvy, and Marina Marr. I just think back to the things they taught me through words and example, and I'm so forever grateful to them.
I feel like we go through these, I guess, waves of and maybe in time and maybe in our careers where we are, more leadershipy than other times. That's a terrible way to say it, but where like there are moments in time where we can really lead and moments that we are just sort of out of our element or something. There are some people who just seem to get it and just
Mhm.
can lead all the time. And maybe it's a function of so many things I can't even put my finger on it, but confidence seems to be one of them for sure. There's a great study. I can't recall who did it or when. So so here I am. I know about much about this study as you do about sports, Ken. But valedictorians, right?
Hmm,
A study of high school valedictorians who are earmarked to be the most successful people. Maybe this was in the Carol Dweck book, the mindset stuff. But anyway, talking about the fixed mindset and the growth mindset, right? And uh, valedictorians, are seen as academic leaders in their time when they're 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. And sure, some of them do go on to be whatever, very successful in their own right. But the vast majority of valedictorians never become true leaders in their own right.
hmm.
They become followers. They become really
Interesting.
good number twos and number threes.
Wow.
Now, I mean, you break that down, and yes, of course, they're leading their own ways sometimes.
Yeah,
I'm sure
interesting.
because if there's a big company, you have a number one who's never a valedictorian. You have your number two or number three. Some of them may have been, and they have people under them and so on. So it's important. But
Interesting.
really, they're taking their cues because, and there's a lot of conjecture, I think, about why this is the case. But my understanding is that it's mainly because the schooling system, you know, you have to have a particular skill set to excel in a school environment, which is to take orders and comply and do
Mm,
exactly what you're asked. And occasionally push boundaries so that you deliver more than you're asked for. But generally speaking, you're really comfortable with guardrails and really comfortable with boundaries and rubrics. Whereas the true innovators, the folks who maybe become leaders, but people who are, your B and C students, right? They focus a lot more in their younger days on social activities. They focus a lot more on, you know, following the rules when it really made sense to do so, but use their own common sense a lot to get through and get by, and didn't think so much about making sure that you know, every sentence was grammatically correct, or,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. So the point is that a lot of CEOs out there were B's and C's, and a lot of, your second level, mid level managers or senior managers, where that's where some of the valedictorians end up. If you don't go into academia or something like that.
I've never heard that. Of
Yeah,
course, not ever having been a valedictorian, I don't know that I can really comment on it. But
yeah,
let's do a segue from there. Talking
yeah,
about studies, there's a study, I know one was done by Google and a similar one by the Harvard Business School, I think,
yeah.
where Google was interested. We've had these some amazing leaders in our company, not the CEO, but the leaders,
Mhm,
lower level, below them, who have had amazing careers and really create, or their teams created. They led their teams to create, and they built leaders under them, and they have these leadership legacies. What sets them apart? What makes for a good Google leader? If your answer is technological learning, you'd be wrong. It wasn't about the technology. It was about emotional intelligence and other skills that we call them soft skills. And I hate that. We've
mhm,
got to start calling them critical skills, human skills, leadership skills. And the people who really had these vast careers at Google, again, not about tech and info, but about emotional intelligence and related skills. It was about leadership. That's what leadership is. Because again, you're leading human beings. And I hear people say sometimes, "Ugh, I wish I could remove emotion from the office." Like, no, stop. First, let's remember
yeah.
emotion is, on such a wave that emotions can be. And I don't even want to say they're good and bad. They're just at different points. So I think when they're saying that, they're saying, I don't like the tears or the hysteria or the anger or yeah,
Mhm.
okay, I get that.
Drama.
Oh, the drama, yes, excellent. But emotions can be, passion and excitement. And those are very powerful emotions. So when we learn how to manage our own emotions. We gain that emotional intelligence and we can tap into that of our followers. That's a huge opportunity to lead. It's a tool to lead, to build your followership. So it is such an important thing to grow. And so that's clearly not management. That's the human side.
Yeah.
That's leadership. That's leadership.
And your point about emotion brings back to something I heard recently about AI in general, about the kind of things that separate the careers of now from the careers of the future. And because you said soft skills, I totally agree with you. It's such a misnomer because those are not the soft skills. They're the hardest skills to learn and to understand, I think, is, the emotional intelligence and,
The most
and empathy
powerful,
and so on.
most powerful.
But think about what the technology side of the business and what those tech skills, over time, AI or, automation will absolutely play a bigger role in those types of jobs, in those types of activities. So you think you're a hotshot coder and you can do all kinds of great stuff with, particular coding languages. There's a severe danger of automation of that, given the current levels. I mean, obviously, technology always changes, and there will be progression, and you'll have to. There's still no AI can inject the kind of creativity you need to to do some interesting stuff with that. But there's no way right now until maybe the neuroscience makes it happen, where there's the true neural net, artificial intelligence, all that cool stuff happening in whenever year that's going to be. But there's no way to replace the emotion. So increasingly, those soft skills are going to be the skills. Like
Yeah.
they'll stop being called soft skills and hard skills. They'll just be skills.
Well, it's funny because they've talked about what role will AI play in coaching.
Hmm.
And I don't know when I think about when we're really in the zone and really empowering a client, and it's just one of those sessions. I'm listening to what they're saying. I'm listening to what's not said. I'm listening to what they mentioned, thinking about. how what they're saying now connects to what they said 2 weeks before or a month before. I'm trusting my coach's instinct. All those things. I don't know if AI can do that. I hope not, because if it can, retirement's coming, and I'm hoping not to retire for a while yet. But so I think it
Yes.
is that human side for as long as we can keep it human. So yeah, you and I, we're gonna come up with a better name for soft skills because
Mhm.
it really denigrates their power skills, aren't they?
They're
Their soft
human
skills.
skills,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They're almost like it's almost like resonance in music, right? Where, I was talking to a vocal coach the other day. Great lady named Denise. She's a former opera singer herself, and she trains people now not to sing, but she helps people with vocal issues, ranging from executives to singers to whatever, right? So I'm trying to be conscious of my voice as I talk about her too, because she's probably listening and saying, doing that. I forget what she called it, burning something. Anyway, point is that when she talks about voice, right, in music, right, you hit a certain tone with your voice where all of the chords are sort of hitting all at once on various octaves, and that's when the recipient's ear really truly hears you well. Like
Hmm.
you can project and do much like without being loud. You're just hitting the absolute right tone for yourself.
I've never heard that expression.
It's a kind of resonance. I forget what the name is for the actual there's an actual vocal
Hmm.
term. She is a professional and she has a doctorate in this and stuff. She knows what she's talking about. Denise, I apologize for butchering your profession here for a moment, but
But you plugged her. You plugged
I
her.
plugged her,
So
yeah.
now people are going to look
Um,
her up. So that's a good
well, yes, I will tag her too.
thing.
The thing is, right, that I think that those human skills that we're talking about, those soft skills, can create that resonance. You talked about that zone that you're in when you're
Hmm.
talking with somebody, you're coaching, and you just there's this kind of hum.
Yeah.
We get that in different moments of our life, right? I know that it's always some people have called it the zone for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
I think it's akin to that musical resonance where all the chords are hitting all at once and you may be only striking one or two strings, but you're hearing 14 notes all at once.
Mm.
So it's extremely powerful. And, you know, that doesn't bring us any closer to getting a better name for those skills but no, I think it's
Yeah.
really important to think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
You
when
know,
I mean,
mhm,
I've had many, I'm very fortunate, many, many sessions where I hang up. And it's not even about the thank you from the client. It's about when they say, here's what I'm committing to, here's what I'm going to do, here's how I'm holding myself, that kind of stuff. And I hang up and I think, for this, they pay me? That was just a joy. So it's a
yeah,
very, for me, I mean, I got to say, I had a very good career in PR, won plenty of awards, Silver Anvil, blah, 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 blah. And not to denigrate Silver Anvil winners, to write a program that gets the award. It was great. But, and I had many, many wonderful clients and many wonderful bosses and many wonderful teams and many wonderful peers. The fulfillment in this career now, I just can't even compare. And, I know you know my dear friend Patrice Tanaka of
just gonna
Joyful
just
Planet.
gonna say you must be getting to Patrice.
Yeah, yeah. How do you know? And I
Joyful
once,
planet.
oh, I might have told you this story before. And I once said to her, Patrice, why did it take me till 50 to figure this out? Why couldn't I have had this knowledge and this wisdom at 45 or 40 or 35? And she was like, well, that's the whole point of knowledge and wisdom and experience. You just have to be open to it and it will come when it comes. And when it does, and this is very Patrice, then you figure out what brings you joy. You figure out your passion. You figure out your purpose. Patrice, I apologize if I mangled some of your phrases, but that's how I think of it. And so when you figure that out, sometimes you realize the career you thought you were meant to have. Well, I was meant to have that career. I don't look back at
Mhm.
all in any positive, negative, whatever, because it set me up for this chapter. But sometimes it takes a while to figure out what your real calling is.
Yeah,
And that's okay. That's okay.
yeah. I think we're in a rush.
Yeah.
People are in a serious rush.
Yeah.
And part of that is because maybe we're inculcated from an early age to find what our calling is. Like you're
Yeah.
expected to decide when you're in college what you want to be, and it just doesn't make sense. I mean, hey, if you are one of those lucky people that chooses that and is just super happy your whole life, you've always wanted to do whatever that is, build cabinets, be an accountant, write books, whatever that blank is, good for you.
Yeah.
And I really, really am extremely jealous and envious of your early of your early joy.
Don't
No,
be.
I know.
Don't be.
I understand. But I do think, we go around and around and punish ourselves for not finding that or not feeling like we're in it. But look, I mean, everything leads to where you are now. It's a future focused thing. So
Yeah. It's funny. The other thing is we think we're on this road to get somewhere and something will happen and eventually we'll be smart and eventually we'll make money and eventually we'll feel fulfilled. And at a certain point you say, no, this is it.
mhm,
This is what life is supposed to be about, of having a career that allows you to live a life of abundance and really enjoying it. Why wait?
yeah.
Why wait? Let it happen. And so I don't know why I think of this, but you had said something earlier about the differences between coaching and consulting. If you accept my definitions, you have to have lived a bit to be a consultant, right? Because it's your counsel, your advice, your knowledge from your experience. You can be very successful as a coach. I'll tell you, in my first in my class, in my first coaching class, that first long weekend, there were many people around my age, a little younger, one or two older. And there was one who was like 26. And if we're being honest, I'm sure some of us thought, how can you be a coach at 26? You haven't lived, you haven't experienced, you haven't worked. Well, she just used the and you do a lot of role play and
Mhm.
a lot of coaching of one another over these 3 long training weekends, and she was magnificent.
Mm,
I'm not gonna name her
sure.
because I don't know if she ultimately took her certification and became a coach.
Mhm.
She was so amazing, and it was like, "You know what?" And I believe the universe makes no mistakes, no coincidences. I believe, among other things, she was put in that class so I and my other trainees could learn the lesson of coaching and consulting are different. Coaching is a process, trust the process. And it's not, you're not sharing advice or experience or expertise. So you can be an amazingly powerful coach, even if you are quote unquote young.
Yeah.
And she really was. I mean, mind blowing.
I guess it's a lot about empathy and listening and knowing how to translate what you're hearing into, that next question
Yeah,
where you are helping somebody to take themselves, as you said, like, no, don't lead them to the water necessarily, but lead them to be able to find their way to the water.
exactly. And I am biased towards certified coaches. I know we've discussed that because when you go for your certification, it's
Mhm,
not for the initials generally. It shouldn't be. I think it's for the initials are valuable because there are certain assignments you're not going to get without certain initials. But that said, you're doing it for the training you
mhm,
get and the tools in the toolbox, the tools in the tool shed, so to speak. So when you go for training, and I'll plug an ICF certified program, International Coach Federation
mhm.
program, you learn a process, you learn the tools. So you have so much from which to choose in the moment so you can help your coaching client. So I'm a big
Yeah,
believer in the training and certification.
and it's done well for you. I mean, you clearly have built a tremendous career on this, a second career or third career, whatever you wanna call it.
Second
Yeah,
career, go
I
figure.
know.
Like who would have thought it? And to be so happy, like who would have thought it? I'll share an example if I may from
Of
the
course you may.
agency, the agency people will relate. So when I was at Marina Mar, we led the launch and a lot of support for the one and only Wonder Bra. And I so remember the events were early in the morning, so I'd stay in New York, stay overnight, leave the hotel, be in the taxi on the way to the event, the big reveal, whatever. We did so many events, and my stomach was in knots. And I remembered I couldn't even think to myself, or I thought to myself and didn't listen. Hey, you did the branding and the strategy behind this event, the messaging behind the event, the creative. That's good. Own it. You have got a superb media team. I'll give a shout out to my friend Suzanne Haber, who was a remarkable leader and a great So, like, they got it. The media is going to be there. And then you've got all these other people on your team who are doing all these things so effectively. And then you've got Marina Marr, your boss, who anything happens with she's there, she's making the clients feel good, she's just there to serve you. What great leadership. I mean, at every event, I just so remember her saying, how can I help you today? I'm like, "You're the boss. Yeah, how can I help you today?" Brilliant, so inspiring. But at any rate, with all that good stuff, like we were going to have a killer event that was going to get amazing local coverage and national coverage, unless there was like a shooting at City Hall, God
Oh,
forbid, right? And I just couldn't relish it. I couldn't enjoy it. I couldn't be in the moment. Now, my consciousness was not raised enough at that time to know you're in the wrong job.
yeah.
I learned, I think we all learn a lot of leadership lessons about our careers after the fact. Like I know what my gut was trying to tell me,
Yep.
and we should always follow our, but my brain kicked in. No, you started your career, you worked for Gene and Barbara, you came through the ranks, you ran a lot of business early. No, you have got to be an EVP at a PR agency. That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
I didn't know. So it was just a great, again, with
Mhm.
hindsight, moment for me in realizing, and I don't even want to say I was doing the wrong thing,
Yeah.
but I was meant to do something else.
And that's like you said, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what we get to this point in our lives where we realize there's more. I'm at this point where I am, you know, building my podcast, of course, and my coaching practice, but I'm really happy working as well with a company. So, I'm trying to balance these things, and the balancing is certainly a challenge, and I'm learning all the time. I probably should sleep more. Is probably is
Yeah,
probably the end result of all this.
sleep is really
Very, very
important. Sleep
important.
is really important. And I'll tell you, there must be a reason for this. When I was commuting to New York, not far from Princeton Junction, I mean, I think I was up at 5 to 5, but I changed my clock so it would say 5, like, so I wouldn't be aware that I was getting up at 5 to 5. And I was getting, 5 hours. It was not enough sleep.
Yep.
I'm now at an age where it's supposed to be harder to get sleep, where it's harder to fall asleep, harder to stay asleep. Like I am sleeping like a babe. Like
Oh,
I
good for
get
you.
my 7 on the weekends. I might, if I don't set an alarm, I'll get 8 plus. So something's going on there. That's good. That
Man,
allows me to, sleep at night. So it really is important. It's good for the brain. So I want to
yeah.
encourage you to get your sleep.
I don't think I've seen anything north of 7 hours since my kids were born 16 years
Yeah.
my first
Yeah.
daughter 16 years ago, but, oh gosh, I would love to do that again.
And I'll embarrass myself further if I don't get 7. I take a midday power nap.
Mhm,
I have to. But this is the power of when you hear something and believe it. I don't know if
mhm.
it's the power of myth, but I once read you should only take a 12-minute nap. Beyond that, you
Oh,
get sleep inertia and it's no good. And I don't know if you go into REM or out of REM or something, but take a nap no more than 12 minutes. And I will tell you that on the days where I haven't gotten my 7 the night before, I will lie down. I'll look at the clock. I will not set an alarm to wake myself up. And if I close my eyes at 2:12, I wake up at 2:24. And if I close my eyes at 2:36, I will wake up at 2:48.
I would love to
It's
train myself
insane.
to do
I
this.
just because I believed it. I read it and I believed it, and I can't get it out of my brain.
It's another lesson that it's not just, what you're doing in your profession, it's not just what you're reading, it's actual physiological, how you stay healthy, how
Yeah.
you maintain your body, everything. It's just so important, and I wish we could get into it, but alas, Ken, we have come to that
No,
moment.
no.
What a great
Where we
conversation we've had.
plan podcasts too? Is that what you're saying?
We're gonna have to plan podcast too, because there are some things I wanna continue to talk to you
I'd
about,
love to.
of
I'd
course,
love to.
and, but I wanna mention before we go that, and I think I might have mentioned briefly, but Ken has connected me with so many great people. I'm indebted already, and we've only known each other for a few months, and I'm already just like it was one of those "Where have you been all my life?" type of connections.
Yeah.
And I'm so thrilled to have met Ken. I would absolutely love to have you back on, Ken. And for those of you out there who want to know more about Ken Jacobs, you can go to jacobscom.com. That's jacobscomm.com, like jacobscommunications.com.
Excellent.
It's all there. You should check out Taking the Lead, his series on leadership. It's like these 10-minute or so video interviews with some really dynamic people. And if you look on his website, you'll find Taking the Lead. It's one of the navigation items. Definitely check that out. The leadership lessons are invaluable. I mean, I think that Ken, you shared some really great stuff on this episode, but that's just scratching the surface. Check out his this stuff, the PR, everything Ken does for the PR Society, PRSA. Are you still doing a lot with them these
Oh
days, Ken?
yeah.
Or
So
yeah,
I have a column also called Taking the Lead, in PRSA's Strategy and Tactics. That comes
Mhm.
out 4 times a year. And I'm on the board of PRSA New Jersey, where I lead the senior professionals group for those with 15 plus years experience. And I'm a very active member of Counselors Academy, and I'm a regular presenter there on leadership and biz dev. So I'm grateful to this great industry that has given me 2 careers. So I do try to give back.
Well, there's lots of people who are grateful to you, not the least of whom, or maybe the least of whom is right here on this
You're
side of the
very
mic.
kind.
Look, I am again extremely grateful. Check out Ken on LinkedIn, of course. Ken, just look for Ken Jacobs. There's a lot of Ken Jacobeses, but you'll see there's a bunch of initials after his name about coaching. So Ken
Thank you.
Jacobs, look for the PR background. Ken, this has been a tremendous pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed it as I knew I would.
Thanks. If you enjoyed this episode of The Dan Nessel Show, please head on over to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or the podcast player of your choice to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And please don't forget to spread the word. Thanks for listening.